none of us did this to be millionaires. We did this because we love the whole industry of building and carpentry. And
It's like, okay, now we got to go do the paperwork, and you're just like,
yeah,
"Ay, caramba."
I guess that's what I'm saying. It can be one component of a build that you're just like, this is awesome. I'm sure you feel the same way. Sometimes it's nice to just have something you've done before so that your mind can settle and focus on, I don't know,
The
another challenge.
business
Yeah,
or
exactly. Traditionally, our industry is pretty closed book, right? Like
mm,
people think there's all these trade secrets and they do something better and they don't want to lose the next job if they tell, Joe Blow this.
to be able to talk to somebody else about exactly understanding what you're going through and just having that chat is like
I'm finally
invaluable for me.
starting to, I think growth can happen without necessarily having 50 people working for you.
And when people understand when you're explaining them something and then they go do that thing and they can accomplish that goal, that's super rewarding for me.
If you're not teaching, I don't know, it's almost like you've chosen the wrong industry a little bit.
It
But
is a labor of love. There's no question about that. Hey everybody, this is Better Building with Buck. Today I've got Taylor here with Frontera Homes. He's up in Victoria. I met him through Canadian Home Builders, and yeah, so we're going to chat a little bit today about why he decided to get into construction and a little bit about why he's been building above code minimum houses and why we think that's important. And yeah, so maybe I'll start with that, Taylor, and um, let's talk a little bit about how you got into construction and why you're still going at this.
well, first of all, thanks for having me on, and I,
Yeah, no
I
worries, man.
apologize we couldn't do this last week, so I'm excited to do it with you. Why did I mean, the reality is because my first job ever after university was a desk job. I'd always done carpentry in the summers, but never really thought about it from a kind of long-term standpoint.
Yeah.
And I realized very quickly that I wasn't meant to be behind a desk all day, even though full circle now that, I've got a small company, you're sitting at a desk a lot more.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I love, yeah, I mean, I think probably the same as you and most other builders, that it's pretty fulfilling seeing something go up in front of your eyes, especially if you're the one, doing the manual labor.
Yeah.
And I was lucky to have worked. I had a close friend. I grew up in Ottawa, and I had a close
Okay.
friend who was a little bit older than I, who had gone to a pretty interesting school out of Perth, Ontario, that focused on like heritage carpentry and timber framing and log building, and a lot of guys became furniture makers, a lot of shop time.
Oh, cool.
And I was actually living in Brazil, also at a desk job, which I didn't like, even though I was in Brazil. And I called him saying, Paul, what do you think? Like, I'm thinking about carpentry. Should I go back to school? Should I just start working for someone like you? And he highly referred this program, or referred me to this program. Highly loved it. He'd probably graduated 6 to 7 years earlier. So I looked into the program, did a site visit, looked at a few other colleges, but this is the one I wanted. And I'd say that was the kind of start of me really taking carpentry and then eventually sort of becoming a builder seriously, in the sense that you start to learn about all the different components and you can go in so many different ways, right? Whether it's green building, or some guys become furniture makers, or modern building, commercial building, residential building, whatever it might be. And I kind of just knew right off the bat that there was no ceiling. You could really learn. I think you're the same. You like being challenged. I like being challenged and learning new things. So
Yeah.
that's how it all started. And
S-
then I ended up, sorry, when I graduated, I ended up working for Paul for a bunch of years, and he was, super like-minded, built beautiful homes, was starting to kind of go in the greener direction. And so I would
Okay.
say he had a huge impact on kind of me seeing what was possible.
Cool.
Um, yeah, to this day, we're still buds.
And so this school that you went to,
Yeah.
does it get into like the classical style of architecture, or is it more like the because you said some of the guys are going into um doing furniture and stuff. So is it more about like joints and understanding like why certain joints go together and stuff like that?
You touch, I mean, I think as you know, we touched on that first. It was a 2 year program, full
Okay.
time. So a lot of you're in class, but then there's a ton of shop time.
Yeah.
The shop time is what I loved, because a lot of the other colleges that I looked into, and I know Red Seal programs here, they're great, but most guys are like, I wish we had more time in the shop. There's a ton of shop time in this. So
Okay.
yes, we did touch on. So it focused on one of our classes was heritage architecture. So a lot of older homes that have ornamental styles of carpentry that you just don't see going up. You learn that, the way to do these types of trim or dental work or whatever it might be is predominantly in a shop. And then you start to get into, well, what type of woods are you using? What type of
Mm,
joinery do you need to use? So yes, but I realized pretty early on that I still love like all components of building. I love finishing, but I really like foundation work too. I like the whole gamut, right? Like that's if you're a custom home builder, you probably agree that it's being able to move. It's like season to season from drywall to finishing and from finishing to the final closeout, whatever it might be. I didn't want to just be in the shop all day. Some of the guys like one guy in particular was an amazing, like just had right off the bat, incredible hands. He just had this IQ with wood that I was not, at least at that point, able to do. And he went on to become a furniture maker. I kind of knew maybe I could get there, but that's not what I wanted my focus to be.
right.
So yeah, we did get into that, but not in depth enough that I feel like I'm an expert at it now, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And then you've been part of some pretty cool projects, and like when you think about when you're getting a customer
Yeah.
and they're coming to you with a problem, how far down the road are you trying to get them towards building this above minimum code house? And the I guess the harder question is, how do you get them from going from this is like a house to um that you should actually maybe do the X to
Yeah.
have an even better home?
Well, I mean, I'm sure not every customer wants to go to X.
Yeah,
I mean, I think we've had a bit of a hybrid of both. We've been lucky, and it's really has been in some sense luck that we've had a couple sets of clients, especially in the last 3 or 4 years, who essentially have sought us out because they wanted something that was already at that X level.
right,
And because we have a little bit of experience in it. And I do think the hybrid of having sort of the characters, predominantly they have been character homes that are now being either renovated. I say renovated, it's almost not the term. One of them in particular was completely gutted, so it almost became a new build in some sense.
right,
But they already had in mind, they were coming to me with terms like, "Hey, how do we build a net zero home?" Or we want to build with passive house style in taking into consideration, or we haven't done one, but living building challenge stuff like that. So that's one type, and then there's no real sale. It's more like, okay, how do we get there? Let's talk about it. The
right.
other ones you do have to sell, and I don't mean sell in terms of the final cost. I mean,
The
you know,
education.
totally. Yeah,
Yeah,
like why are you thinking a gas furnace? Especially with the subsidies, have you considered heat pumps? Oh, well, we don't want a heat pump. Well, this is how a heat pump works, and maybe come to one of our previous builds and fiddle around with it, get a feel for it. So
right.
things like that, which I'm sure you're dealing with as well.
Yeah,
And then sometimes, although rarely, they will then start to buy into, okay, wow, maybe we should replace the insulation, or maybe we should, take off siding here and do an exterior insulation envelope system, or maybe we'll add solar panels, whatever it might be. But it's those ones tend to have, let's face it, a bit tighter budgets, and it's always that triangle of like, okay, aesthetics, and then the green build, and then obviously your budget, right?
yeah, fair enough.
Even clients we have right now that we're doing, a net zero build. There are certain aspects that they are hesitant towards because they think it's gonna like one of the, for instance, the um, one of the clients, the wife has arthritis and she doesn't like
Okay.
casing windows because it hurts her hands.
Oh,
So
okay.
now push out windows, triple glaze, push out windows. But
Right,
as soon as you go to a push out window, and this is news to me, I didn't know about this until she had asked, the U value of the window goes way well, up the wrong way. So it's
right.
no longer as energy efficient.
Mm,
So then it's like you can't tell her not to take these windows because she literally
yeah.
can open a casement window, but are we actually going to achieve net zero? Maybe not. So then,
Mm,
so
yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
every
because like
build has those kind of compromises, I guess, and
that's
yeah,
fair.
it can be tricky.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And w- when when you've been getting excited about certain builds, what are the things that are getting you like, okay, I'm excited to get to this job and do these things? Like when you're having to think outside the box to get a detail sorted out. Because like I find that lots of building is trying to assemble this thing in your head without any of the pieces. And then you're having to like sometimes you have to build some sort of mock-up, but like lots of this time that you're driving from point A to point B, you're like drilling down these assemblies trying to be like, okay, if this thing comes into there, how does this play out? Probably doing your school was super helpful in like understanding how many layers of material have to be built out to get to this finished product. And like especially when you're doing sorry, not cabinetry but joinery, you know you're having to think about three cuts before you get to this final cut, else you're never even be able to get that cut even done, or it'll be extremely hard.
100%.
Yeah.
But that, I mean, you started by saying the chat, like, I love challenge. Like, I mean, I do and I don't, but I do love a job that has some component that is something I've never done before,
Mm,
right? Like, sure, it's nice every now and then to have I don't know, an exterior deck that's simple, and you're like, okay, just throw the guys at it, or you don't have to think about it. It's nice and sunny out. It's like this is why we're in carpentry, easy,
yeah.
sure, but that's not that's not at all why I got into this, and I'm sure you're the same. Like, none of us did this to be millionaires. We did this because we love the whole industry of building and carpentry and the fulfilling part that we've spoken about. But also, like, for instance, we just took a job in Oak Bay that I wouldn't say was the most interesting job in the world,
Hmm.
but it had a really interesting floating staircase case that I'd never done before. And I was like, okay, like, it's the client seemed awesome. The millwork details were nice. Like, it was, a type of project you'd want to put on in your portfolio, but not also something that I dream about. But the floating staircase was enough for me to be like, okay, and it was a tricky floating staircase. I'd never done one like that before, and it turned out okay. But if it hadn't had that component, we would have maybe just taken it to like fill space because I had to keep the guys going or something.
Right.
So I guess that's what I'm saying. It can be one component of a build that you're just like, this is awesome. Like, this house we're doing, this net zero, we've never done a lift before. I've always, since moving to the island, I've always wanted to do a lift. I feel like there's so many more on this island that I'd ever seen growing up in Ottawa.
What do you mean when you say a lift?
So it's an old character home, 1912,
Yeah.
but it's kind of in shambles. The body of the home is nice, like it's got nice shape and the layout can be configured. But the basement, for instance, is 5 foot crawl space,
Oh, okay, I see.
and the clients want to make it fairly green. So we've chatted about this, and I said, look, if you really want to make this green and gain a lot of usable space, let's lift the house so we
Right.
can wrap the whole house with an air barrier, right? Because now you can't, you're just tying to an existing foundation, and it's okay, but you're not really bringing it up to the standards of, like, let's say a new build. So the house will be jacked up 3 feet. We're going to get under there. We're actually, in this case, because the foundation's not great, we're taking out the existing foundation, excavating down to gain a little bit of height, new insulation, new foundation, new walls between top of foundation, underside of existing, and then dropping it down. But we'll be able to wrap the whole thing, which is awesome.
Yeah, that is sweet.
But that I've never done it before. Like,
Right.
so I'm just excited about that component of the build.
Right.
Uh, yeah, but at the same time, in saying that, I'm sure you feel the same way. Sometimes it's nice to just have something you've done before so that your mind can settle and focus on, I don't know,
The
another challenge.
business
Yeah,
or yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
always trying to make time for doing the things that need to get done, or when you get excited to actually put work in place, sometimes it's like, okay, now we got to go do the paperwork, and you're just like,
yeah.
hey, caramba,
Yeah,
back
that's
to that again.
it's not why any of us got into it, probably. But I mean, you somehow make time to do stuff, things like the podcast, which I'm sure is a labor of love,
It
but
is a labor of love. There's no question about that.
that's
But
great.
but for me, I find that if I didn't do this, then it's like it's therapy to me, is what it is really.
Yeah.
And like uh to be able to talk to somebody else about exactly understanding what you're going through. and just having that chat is like
I find
invaluable for me.
cathartic too. I being able to talk, it's funny because don't you find, traditionally our industry is pretty closed book, right? Like
Mm,
people think there's all these trade secrets and they do something better and they don't want to lose the next job if they tell, Joe Blow this thing they're doing. Yeah, whereas like if you look at the tech world, everything's open, everything's public. They have these accelerator programs where, different small business owners are coming together and, helping their businesses grow. And I like that part about like the meetings we go to. Guys are sharing ideas, and you have a little side coffee chatting about like what's the software you're using? Oh, my software is not great, or yeah, because day to day, it's not like I'm talking to a ton of builders, right?
yeah, fair enough.
So it's cool that you get an opportunity outside of those meetings to do that.
Yeah, it is, it's pretty fun. I do enjoy it. But yeah, as far as the labor of love, it's definitely that, at least for now. Um, when so you moved out from Ottawa, and
Yeah.
did you have your business started before you came out here, or?
The true story is that my longtime girlfriend and I had split, and I was
Okay.
like, "Oh, I need a break from Ottawa." Or I was actually living in Montreal. I started in Ottawa,
Okay.
and my girlfriend got into school in Montreal, so I worked for a different contractor in Montreal.
Okay.
And at the very end of that period in Montreal, I'd gone off on my own.
Mm,
Uh, and then we broke up, and I was like, I don't know if Montreal is the place. It's funny, I love Montreal as a city, but as a builder, it wasn't my like I really second guessed what I was doing there because middle of the winter, you're walking up flights of stairs outside with a miter saw in your hand on this tiny staircase, nowhere to park your car,
oh yeah.
mostly infill renos, not the island, where you're sometimes have an opportunity to work with beautiful woods or there's just more space here. So I came out here, I built a house for a friend. That was kind of the impetus with the
Okay.
idea of moving back in 4 months. 9 years later, I'm here, and then took a job with. That's actually how I know Mark Bernhardt. I was really interested in learning more about passive house building,
Oh,
and
okay.
somehow I forget if I must have reached out to him just to meet him, see his build, and then he needed a site lead, and I said, sure, I'd love to. So I came and built. They were doing side by side passive house duplexes, so I built one with him. And
Okay.
then Mark, I think that might have been the last build Mark did. I don't know if you knew this, but Mark had built at the time more passive house as a builder or as a developer than anyone else in Canada. I think he built 6 or 7 passive houses
Oh, good for him.
prior to him becoming an energy modeler, which was, it was obvious he always had the science thing down. And then after that build, probably like you, just started thinking, hey, maybe I can make a run at it. Started getting, I got a basement suite and then, a couple kitchen renos and had one guy started working with me and then
Just
it
keep billing.
yeah, it started going. But, I also have no, I think growth can happen without necessarily having 50 people working for you. I would love to be able to keep it to a size that I'm still able to go to site and be part of the actual job versus
Mm,
literally being in the office all the time, which sometimes I feel like I am.
right. Fair enough.
Do you feel
Uh,
that at all? Do you feel like, is growth something that's important to you in terms of like crew size?
mm, only, only in the way that I want to be able to make sure that I'm able to teach more people.
Right.
So like that there's more carpenters that have a well-rounded carpentry experience, I guess is what it is. And and I like teaching, so that's something that gives me a
Cool.
lot of like value. And when people understand when you're explaining them something and then they go do that thing and they can accomplish that goal, that's super rewarding for me.
I agree.
But
I
with that
totally.
being yeah, but with that being said, even like I had a meeting about a week ago with my guys, and I said how I'm starting to step away from the job site more, and how that I was feeling anxious about that, but then they've been producing great work while I wasn't there. So now I'm feeling like, okay, well, this is not so bad. But it's just, getting the right people in place is what's been hard. And so I feel that trying to go find somebody that is already skilled is almost harder than just getting somebody fresh that has the ability to want to learn and then have to like go through the trenches with them to get them up to snuff is like something that I think is important, but also is a struggle in its own way.
Yeah, I agree. I don't disagree. I mean, I think there's pros and cons of both. The other part of it is if you get someone green and you've got a good culture already, whether it be work ethic or whatever it might be, then they're gonna learn that. Whereas if they come from various companies and have tons of experience, culturally it might be a weird fit. It might not, it just might not work.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's a juggle. And then also talking about that, it's a lot of time to get a guy from green to a level at which basically they're somewhat self-sustaining, you
Yeah.
know?
Like it's not like point shoot. Like I had a guy out, he lasted maybe a month and I realized that I was giving taking away, a $50 an hour guy to tell this other guy to do a $2 task. And it was like over and over again, it's like puts on a piece of rain screen. What's next? Well, there's a whole fucking wall of rain screen.
Yeah,
Like
the whole thing.
just
Yeah,
keep going.
yeah.
And it was every task like that. And I just ended up having to say, hey, this doesn't work, man. Like, unfortunately, you're not able to see that there's another step.
We just let go of a guy like that too. And it's too bad. I also fault myself. I don't know if you look at like I want Frontera to have a like a teacher's mentality because I think if you
Mm,
get to a certain level in carpentry, of course you can always learn more, but it's almost like you gotta teach yourself, right? Like actually that was one of my kind of, shall we say, lessons. One of our best carpenters who has now since moved to New Zealand, actually, unfortunately, but he was great. He was an awesome guy, but he had a couple guys working with him who were medium. And I said to him in his last year working with us, I said, Graham, your challenge right now is to try and bring at least one of these two other guys up a couple levels, right? Because
right.
now need anywhere you work, whether you're your own boss or if you're the lead of the company, you're always basically going to have guys below you, and you got to, it's the whole weakest link thing. You got to bring them up a couple notches, and he did it. It was awesome, and he wasn't. I think he is a. I think we're all kind of in some ways. I would say that most of us enjoy or find teaching fulfilling, but
Hmm.
some people just don't even think about it or don't want to do it. And by the end of it, he said he's like, I actually really enjoyed that process, just like what you just said. I do too. I just find, unfortunately, now that I'm less and less on the site,
Yeah.
it's almost like teaching in a different way. And I don't know if I've totally mastered.
Well, it's leadership too, right? Like you
Yeah,
say, you told this guy you obviously had to instill something into what was his name, Graham?
Graham. Yeah,
Yeah, you had to instill something in Graham to you had to understand Graham well enough to get him motivated to to
yeah, that's
to
true.
so
That's
like
true.
it was you were teaching in your own way. It's like, hey, I understand where you are and I need these other guys to be where you are. So it's like you're kind of like doing this hopscotch, like motivate the motivator to motivate, you know, as
Totally.
it goes. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I get, and it's true. That's basically it. I mean that is the because you probably I love the camaraderie of a build site.
yeah,
So I love being on the site. I don't think it's always the best use of my time these days
yeah.
because there's just so many other pieces and things that are, little fires to put out or something to look into. Um, so maybe that's what it is with, with the growth of any company that inevitably occurs, any small business that you're still teaching in some capacity. You got to find those moments, those ways, or take the project manager, site super, whoever it is aside and say, hey, have you considered this? Because X, Y, and Z is happening. But yeah, teaching is a big part of it though. You're very correct that if you're not teaching, I don't know, it's almost like you've chosen the wrong industry a little bit.
Yeah,
It's
because
anecdotal
it's
about
a
it.
skilled, you don't, you can be a natural at it, but there's so many things that, like, little things to make your life so much easier that, like, you know, the way in which you would pick up a nail and put it into something. And it's like, if you didn't get taught that, then how many times you would have hurt yourself doing that task, where it's like, after you build up, 200 of these little tasks, and you can accomplish that job so much easier.
Totally.
And
Or
oh,
it's
good.
funny. I was actually with another builder this morning. Just I was he's done a few passive builds, and I was asking him about a few kind of details. And one of the things which is similar to what you just said, they'd done like 7 passive houses, and they go around after the first board out test, and wherever there's air leakages, they tape it or caulk it or whatever. But they kept using clear caulk.
Mm.
But then, sometimes when you caulk, you think you've got it all, but then there's like a little gap, right? Like
Oh,
somehow.
okay.
So it took him 7 passive house bills to realize one day he came to a site and they were doing all this, but one of the guys had run out of clear caulking, so he's using white caulking. And they came back the next day, and with white caulking, if there's a gap, right, you see blackness behind it.
Very apparent.
So so it was just like this thing that, to be honest, I would never have thought of that right off the hop. But it's like now he just tells guys only use white caulking. It'll save you, maybe only a few minutes, but it'll save you time looking for holes in caulking when you're sealing for a passive house.
Yeah.
Smart little thing, right? But those little things to pass down are also, those little like trade tricks. I
Yeah.
love them.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. They sure make our lives a lot easier.
Gosh. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man. Um, well, maybe we'll wrap this up. And I'd like to have you on again at some point where we could maybe dive into this a little deeper.
Love
Um,
it.
and I thank you so much for coming on today, Taylor.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I feel honored. This is my first podcast, so it's pretty
Oh,
cool.
sweet, dude. Well, but
Yeah.
it won't be your last, because you're definitely going to be on here again, because I
I think
sure liked connecting with you. I was happy that Mark got us connected and we met at Canadian Home Builders, and so that was
same.
great.
Same
Yeah.
with me, and I honestly do. I think it's awesome to do this. It's like it brings a little fun to our industry, which sometimes I feel like can be a little bit too dry and serious. So
Well,
and
yeah.
learning too, right? Which is
Yeah.
fun. So anytime, and I want to hear. I mean, obviously we can do it on the side, but I want to hear more about your work, your builds, and your podcast too. So
Yeah,
good
good.
good luck.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor.
Thank you.